he got fired from his job, and from that he built a rental empire and is just crushing it and really making a change in Chicago's South Side. So I need you guys to give me as much energy, or he's not coming up here at all. I need you to give as much energy and your loudest applause for Mr. Jared Cott. Come on, guys. All right, well, again, Jared, real appreciate you being here.
Appreciate it.
So I'll just let you kind of talk a little bit about your background, how you got started, and then we'll jump into some questions.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for the introduction. That actually felt like a South Side introduction rather than a North Side introduction. I'm, anybody from the South Side? All right, I like it. I'm a South Side guy. I moved to Chicago from the East Coast about 15 years ago, and on paper had absolutely everything you can imagine. I had a great job, I had money in the bank, I was relatively happy, and February 13th, 2013, I got a phone call, and then it was HR department, and they said, "You know where conference room B is?" And I said, "I do." And they said, "Why don't you meet us down there?" And I knew what was going on. I was getting fired. So I grabbed my stuff and got fired. And I was in commercial underwriting for insurance. So I was underwriting large portfolios of habitational business. So multi-unit buildings, 100, 200 units. And I'd travel around the country and I'd get to know these guys. And I was underwriting their portfolio, talking about insurance. But as the nights went on and the dinners, and at that time for me, wine and liquor and all sorts of other things, went down, we talked about real estate. And I look at it as it was God's gift to me to get fired. Because I couldn't stand insurance. I thought it was completely boring. I couldn't stand corporate America because I really am not somebody that follows rules well. And I didn't have the courage myself to go. So that's kind of how the story started. Want me to keep going? You're not ready, huh? So February, I get that kind of shot to the gut, if you will, and I'm like, what am I going to do? I got to replace this income. I was living in River North, and I was fearful, but I was also like a little bit excited and relieved at the same time. And that afternoon, it was a Friday, I went and had lunch with a friend of mine who's a real estate attorney, and he said, "This is the greatest thing that could ever happen to you." And I'm like, "I just told you I got fired, you know, what do you mean?" And he said, "You always hated that job, blah, blah, blah." So he said, "You've got to go, if you want to be on the South Side and invest down there, you've got to go and hook up with a company called CIC, Community Investment Corporation." And that's what I did that Monday. I didn't know who they were, but you know, it wasn't that long ago. Google was around. I Googled them and researched some stuff. I set up a meeting, and I just told them the story that I told you. Just different dates. I said I got fired. I want to get into real estate. I was an insurance guy. I don't know much about it. My attorney sent me here to talk to you guys. And they said, "Go take this property management training program. It's at Malcolm X College. It starts like literally like tomorrow." So I went and did that. And I began to just do what people told me to do that I somewhat respected in this business. That's how this whole thing started to take shape. Bigger Pockets was just kind of, I don't know if it was just coming out, but I had nothing to do. I was fired. I spent day and night doing that. I went to these RIAs. You know, I remember like looking around and you know, talking to guys like Josh that were flipping houses and getting these checks and having rentals, and I'm like, how are they doing this? And it's literally one day at a time, one house at a time, one unit at a time. And I decided that if I was going to make this my career, replace my income and do something that would also have a positive impact on a community, I needed to figure out a geographical spot where I can pretty much like post my flag down and say, I want to be ingrained here, and I want to not control, but I want to get to know every aspect of this area. And I did that in the zip code of 60617. which is South Chicago. It's really far south, like almost at the Indiana border. If any of you guys ever go to the Horseshoe Casino, it's not far from there. And properties are cheap and rents are relatively high. And I found a model that just worked really well for cash flow. So if we go back 5 years, I'll give you an example. The first deal that I did was purchased for like $26,000, and I did 40 in rehab, and now it rents for, it's the same, pretty much the same rents, but it's $1,200 each side. So I mean, these were significant cash flow plays, and I didn't understand how to manage units. I was using some a HELOC loan is what I started with off a condo, and I quickly realized after like my third deal that I'm going to run out of this money. But the good thing was, and we were just talking about that in that breakout session, I don't know if Joey's still here, but like accelerating paying debt down and loans. I was paying this HELOC down no problem with other people's money, which was the rent. So I was cool. But how do I keep going? Now I'm stuck. I see the bank account going lower and lower and lower. So I started learning then about, you know, positioning of debt and refinancing of properties, which is where that relationship with CIC came in. So I went to them and I said, hey, I have these units. I've gotten to know you guys. I've taken your management program. Now I have these, I think I had 10 units, and they just came out with a program. It was a refinance program of one through 4 units. You have to have 9 units combined, and they would refinance you out. So I said, come take a look and let's work this out. And they took a look at it and they walked through and they said, it's pretty nice. I said, thank you. They said, who did your rehabs? And I said, like, a bunch of us did. Like, I did a little bit, and this guy helped me on the street, and this guy over here helped me. And they said, I thought you were an insurance guy. And I said, I was. And they said, well, we can tell you're certainly not a rehabber. So here's the problem. You've somehow got these tenanted up, and you somehow have these cash flowing, but we don't want to put a loan on these because of your rehab quality. So you're going to have to come up, and they gave me a checklist, you know, punch list of everything I needed to do, and they weren't disasters. They just weren't at the standard of really what they should have been to having, you know, people living in the units at the time. So I borrowed like $65,000 from friends and family, went, replaced some furnaces and some windows and things that they wanted. The loan went through. I paid my HELOC back, HELOC loan off. I paid the private money off, and then I did the cycle again. And I did that 5, 6 times with them at different amounts. And I've continued to do that. I've not sold any properties. You know, the market's changing, as we all know. We've seen prices go up, and there's many times where I say to myself, man, this would be easy. Let's just get rid of this. And I haven't yet, but I will tell you that I am just now, in the last few months, considering selling the couple first pieces of the assets that we have. And what I would do with that money right now would actually be not much. I would sit on it. And I don't know what's going to happen, and I don't know if that's the right reason, but I'm just telling you what I would do. I think that it's a good time to have cash on hand, because there's always going to be a deal, right? Just like there's deals today, there's just not as many. I think tonight's a very interesting night with elections. I think that we should pay attention real closely to interest rates and how quickly they move. And I'm going to continue to grow my management business, pick off some deals here and there that make sense on a cash flow perspective. And I'm certainly going to reposition some debt, because as I'm 5 years in from the first loan, I'm totally comfortable taking the entire portfolio, putting it on 30-year fixed at under 5%. I think that's I know that that's my strategy. So Does that give you a good kind of snapshot of where I was and what's going on?
Definitely. So, Jared, tell us a little bit about, because there's some investors here who have done quite a few deals or some that are brand new.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your very first deal.
Sure.
What were your challenges? Like you mentioned, like obviously you're not a rehabber,
Yeah.
right? So let's dive into that a little bit. What were those challenges when you were doing that? How did you raise that money that you needed to replace the windows, do the furnaces? Let's talk about that.
Sure. All right, so the first part, the problems are pretty clear, right? Like, I didn't have a team. The guy that I trusted was an attorney, so I got the deal closed, right? I had a HELOC loan, but I don't know who the loan officer was. I didn't have a relationship that could go deeper with money, and I certainly didn't know the rehab model, like a good, true rehab model. I mean, I could fix a cabinet and stuff like that, but I wasn't a pro. So what I realized after that very first deal was, after the whole thing kind of went sideways, was I needed a team. You know, I'm still trying to figure out what I'm good at, and I think I figured out, which is like driving the boat. Right? I have vision. I can understand how to get there, but with the details in between, I need people that are better than me at numerous things to be with me to make this successful. So the last part of the question was with the money. Is I knew the percentage rate that I was making off the rentals, so just like the HELOC, and at that time, I mean, these things were cheap. I mean, it was like I was just telling Jerry about this, it was like 3.3, 3.4. I mean, it's basically found money. So I went to my insurance buddies and said, yeah, I'll give you 5. I don't need it for a long time, I'll give you 5%. You know, and they didn't ask me about like collateralization or anything. I mean, it was a relationship that was put together. They were comfortable with it, and that's how that went down.
So tell me, how did you manage the construction on your rehab? Who were you hiring?
Well, I learned real quick that I wanted to help change South Chicago, but South Chicago really didn't want me to change it. So we kind of came to a crossroads, me and South Chicago. And what I realized immediately was that if I wanted to be successful, and again, it comes down to I needed to surround myself with people. I didn't surround myself with the right rehabbers. I surrounded myself with the right people that have been ingrained in that community for much, much longer than I've been. Decades upon decades upon decades, rather than me being a few months with this grandiose idea that I'm going to flip a zip code. So I had some gang members help me at first. I mean, I was in some real troubled areas. I loved giving, and I still do this, I love giving people second chances. So felons that are coming out that really want a second chance, nobody's going to work harder.
So I got to throw this in here.
Yeah.
So if any of you do construction, like contractors like blaming each other, like, oh, it's the last guy. So
Yeah.
I could imagine if you've got rival gang members, one's the plumber and one's
Yeah.
the electrician.
Yeah.
No, but
It could have got hairy, but
they were all in
worked
the
out.
same gang.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same side of the tracks. But it's, you know, some of these guys who we just referred to as gang members, you know, they didn't choose. They may have made a choice, but it doesn't mean that they want to continue down that road, right? And if you think about, if you can give somebody an opportunity, right, it's up to them now to say, I'm either going to take this or I'm going to waste this. It's up to them. And I can't tell you the amount of opportunities that I've given young men in that community. And I would say probably 95% of them did themselves wrong. Did not do me wrong, did themselves wrong. But there's 5% that's still with us. And they're loyal to the bone, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, no, I really admire that about yourself. One example, I've seen Jared's operation, and it's pretty amazing what you guys are doing. One example comes to mind about the arson. Why don't you you're all about second chances.
Yeah.
Let's talk. So
the arson story. Somewhere in the 20 to 30 unit range, we began to systemize how, a structure for lease ups and structure in the property management side of the business. So what there was absolutely no tolerance for was evictions, right? We'll work with you with a credit score, but like if you've already gone to where the sheriff has to come out, you're not wanted here. It's a non-negotiable. So the guy at the time who was running the leases comes and says, listen, I've got a weird one. Like the credit's actually pretty good and there's no evictions, but there's like this one felony, and I know you have that weird sweet spot of 7 years. It was 8 years ago, so I want to bring it to the table. Okay, what is it? He said, it's an arson. And I said, it's an arson? And he said, yeah, it's an arson. And I said, well, what's the building address? And he told me the building address. And I said, no, that's not going to work. And he's like, what do you care about the address? And I said, well, that's a frame building. If it was brick, we may consider this. But I said, a frame's not going to work. So some of you got that, but it was a true story. But we actually still have her. So that was 5. So she's going on 6 years with us.
Without burning the house down yet?
Hasn't burned it down. It's one of the, every year when we annualize, we go over our insurance premiums and whatnot with our carrier. That's one we highlight and make sure we have extra coverage on. But here's really how that went down. We sat with her and said, listen, you've got this like big kind of sticky, gorilla on your report here. What happened? And she said, I'll tell you right now. She goes, this is 8 years ago, and she told us exactly the date. She's like, I was dealing with major anger issues. I did not handle it properly, but here's what I've done differently moving forward. And she's like, I meet with a counselor, I do this, I do that. And she showed us. And she still continues to send that stuff in on a quarterly basis to let us know that what she said was true, and she's been a happy Marblestone tenant since, and we still have a frame building not burned down. So
awesome. So let's talk a little bit about obviously starting out. Your rehab process wasn't worked out. We'll jump into property management a little bit. What's your process now for renovation when you buy something? What do you do differently than what you did starting out?
All right, so what we do now is we sub things out. So it's like if you go to a mechanic, right? Like if somebody's gonna fix my tires, like I wanna go to a tire guy. It's the same thing when you're dealing with furnaces, piping, plumbing, and electric. Like I want the HVAC guy just doing HVAC. Nothing drives me nuts more than when I talk to a contractor and say, what are you good at? And anybody in this business who has done rehabs has heard this, what are you good at? I'm good at everything. Pick something, right? I want you to be somewhat of an expert. So the HVAC guys, like we want them to have a license. Plumbers have a license. It doesn't mean that everything that we do has to have a pulled permit, but you have to understand the code, things like that. And then we have 4, 6, depending on the week or the month, guys that are just on the payroll that are going to be doing everything else, the tile, the drywalling, the painting, and those guys for us know our model. So when you go into a Marblestone unit, you're going to see the same color gray, you're going to see the same tile, you're going to see the exact same toilet, and that kind of parlays into the management side of things. Is that when you streamline this part of the business, it eliminates these questions from the rehabbers as well as the management side of things. As well, on a unit turn, like what do you want to do with the color? It's the same thing. The toilet's broken. What toilet do we buy? The same thing. It's the same. So we've systemized it.
And so let's talk a little bit about, since you have, these are full-time, essentially handymen. You said you have 4?
4, sometimes 6, yeah.
Okay, so how does that, are they payroll or are they still independent contractors?
So this is what I like to do, and this is a really good tip for anybody that's kind of looking to maybe at the point of scaling. I'm all for paying taxes, and we do it, but I'm also very much for empowering as I told you prior, empowering people and also employees. And here we'll talk specifically about contractors. What I like to do is educate the contractors who may not be educated on running a business. So we'll pay, I'll personally pay, or the business will personally pay for them to open up an LLC. So we'll call it Collins LLC. We pay for that. They're a 1099 contractor. All the money goes to Collins LLC. They're at any time they can leave. But we want to feed them enough work where they don't want to go anywhere. And that's what we've done. And then we have the contractors work with our accountant to say, well, that's the biggest fear. Well, I don't understand taxes. How do I do this? Go see our guy. He'll give you a discount volume rate. Keep your receipts. We give them a, here's 10 things not to do. And,
So everybody is independent contractors?
Every single person.
Even the maintenance guys?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And they're free to go, right? And they're legally set up, but like, why would you bite the hand that feeds you every day if you get treated well, right? So I've only heard of one other company doing that, and so that wasn't my idea. That's a company out of Northwest Indiana called Good Success. If you guys haven't heard of them, they're really awesome. And a guy by the name of Tom Olson did that, and I spent some time with him, and I said, do you care if I take this? And he says, nope, do it. And it's been phenomenal. And they sign all the stuff, like 1099, boom, boom, boom. That's it.
That's awesome. So obviously so now we're going to jump in a little bit into the property management side. So you've got your handyman. How does that work when somebody, let's say they have a leaky toilet or something breaks in the middle of the night? What's your process, especially with the scale that you did? Let's talk about what you did starting out again.
Yeah.
Just so we have night and day, right? What did you do starting out? And then what does that look like today if somebody's looking to build so they can build it the right way?
Sure. This is actually a really good question because I beat myself up a lot thinking that I'm not, like my processes just aren't as tight as they should be. But when I go back and look at these questions, they've come a long way. So what it used to be like was I did it all. I did the rehab, which sucked. I did the leasing, which I think I did a fairly good job at. And then I would give the tenants my cell phone, and I'd say, call me. You need anything, call me. I've lived in houses before. I never called my landlord. I mean, shit would break left and right. I'd never call my landlord, ever. I give it to a tenant, it seems that they would always call me. 10, 11 o'clock at night, or early in the morning, or I just sat down for lunch. That's how it was. And at around the 20 unit mark, it wasn't like a nervous breakdown. It was a feeling of disgust. Like I hate this. I no longer enjoy this. I don't want to flip this community anymore. And it's because of this, like the phone ringing, and I'm not gaining any traction, and I can't plan my days. And how can I even thinking about growing when, Miss Molly's calling me about her toilet, and this person's telling me they're going to be 4 days late on rent. I don't want to hear that. But it's also a very real part of this business. So what I did 2.5 years ago was I worked with I believe in a lot of business-to-business relationships. So I work with a company called Secure Pay One now, who we pay, and what they do is they're basically they're out in the burbs. 24-hour live person answers that phone call, and then from there, whatever issue, somebody's calling about a stopped-up toilet, that issue goes into our management software system, which is time-stamped and tracked and all that good stuff, and then it gets automatically dispatched to the appropriate person. If it's a handyman and it's in that handyman zone, if you will, it's going to that guy. If it's a escalated issue in that guy's zone, it's going to that guy. So we've defined what is an emergency and what is not. When will calls be responded to, and also when is there how long is it, when does it become an issue if you don't respond? And internally, what we've decided is a non-emergency issue needs to be addressed within 48 hours. We feel that that's more than reasonable to get back to somebody. So that's how we do that now. And it's working to a point where I'm going to leave here, get on a plane, go to New Jersey for 4 nights to go see Tony Robbins and dance around and high five and walk on fire. And the business is going to run just fine. It's going to be absolutely fine without me. I don't have worries about it. I have good people that show up every day. I have people in the field that care. And yeah, we've come a long way, so it's cool.
So explain, what if it's an emergency? So do they then directly contact that plumber? Let's say
Yeah, so anything would so let's just break this down, right? So if it's water and it's southeast side, and I won't bore you with the geography, but we have basically 2 maps, right? So it's zone 1 and zone 2. Zone 1 as a plumber, zone 1 as an electrician, zone 1 as a major handyman. Anything water related that's constantly moving or coming through a ceiling is a code red, and that plumber knows that we've created this LLC for you. We feed you a lot of business. We understand that you're an independent contractor. You need to get to any code reds. But in all honesty, and I'm going to find some wood and totally knock on it, there's not a lot of those. There's some, and they're going to happen. There's no doubt about it. But it's not something that keeps me up at night. What keeps me up at night more? Not much keeps me up anymore. But what is a major thorn in my side are problem tenants. Much more than a water leak. I mean, a problem tenant will suck you dry, waste your time, make you not want to be in this business. But guess what? That's part of the business, right? It's an 80-20 rule. We have 80% of our portfolio are people that I would personally have over to my house without a problem and say, come on and let's have a cheeseburger. The other 20, if you really want to know, I'll be outside after. But we have to look at it. It's like any other business. We're not going to love every aspect of what we do, and not every client, we all have clients that we probably don't care for. It's just part of the game. And you gotta. I think you have to go into it if you're going to go into long-term buy and holds. Either if you're not into the tenant relations part and like structuring of getting this done, or you're not handy, find yourself a good management company. Right? Have them handle it. Pay them whatever their rates are, and stay out of it. But make sure they're good. And then, if you're, if you don't want to pay that money and you want to be more involved and you want to hold more control, which a lot of people do, which is fine, just be thick-skinned and understand that you're going to have these issues, and just like everything else, you can work through them.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about which I think is the most critical question of the night that I'm going to ask you, because this will make or break your business. How did you screen tenants if you want to build a rental business? How did you screen tenants when you started out, and what does that screening process look like today?
It's the key. It really is the key. So I was much more like ingrained on the street, like in it, like every day. So I would get the leads, as the portfolio was small. If we were rehabbing a 2-unit, I only had to fill 2 units. That's not a big deal. So I would ask people, anybody looking for an apartment? Like, I was a sketchy guy on the south side. I just finished a rehab. You know anybody? Like, I was like the guy that sounded like the drug dealer. And I would go to schools and do things like that. I mean, I wouldn't like creep around the playground or anything, but yeah. So I would ask people. I would go to. I always wanted handymen. That's what I thought would be the best tenant. So I would go to Ace. There's an Ace Hardware on Commercial Avenue down there, and I would always put my for rent signs with my own personal cell phone, waiting for like this perfect handyman tenant to call and say, yeah, I'll rent your place for $1,000. This will be perfect. And then if anything breaks, by the way, hey, I'm the guy, I'll fix it. That was what I envisioned. Never happened that way. So what ended up happening was I got my first tenant was, I put a sign in the window, she called my cell phone, she said to me, do you have, I'll never forget this, her name was Mary, and she said, do you take Section 8? I'm like, I think so. Tell me exactly what it is you need. And she's like, well, I have my Section 8 papers. Do you want to take them? And I was like, sure. Let's meet at the property. So I didn't know about the program. I mean, I knew about the program. I didn't know the depths of it. I mean, she brought me a packet, and I'm like, what is this, like 50 pages here? Where do I sign? Where do you sign? So that's how it began. So then I realized, you know what? I need to learn everything I can about this program. So I went to CHA, the Chicago Housing Authority. I ingrained myself over there, built some relationships, and then trained other people on my team on how to do those things. What does it look like today? Man, I don't do it. We have so we have 2 virtual assistants that they're in the Philippines that rotate 8-hour shifts. So like from like 2 to 5 in the morning, you won't like see anything from Marblestone on Craigslist or bumping of ads. But other than that, they're bumping ads, and they're calling anybody that comes in. They built this Google sheet with a calendar, which is filled out with leasing agents, and then the leasing agents pick their times to say, you know, like let's say Josh was the guy. He's like, listen, I want to do some leasing for you this week. I'm available, but I'm only available like Tuesday at like 8 in the morning and Thursday at like 2 o'clock. We're like, well, just put your time in there. And then what we'll do is as the calls come in, we set the time, okay? We set the time. What happened before, when it was my cell phone and I was doing it, I'd say, what time is good for you? And Josh would say, I don't know, like I can get there probably like 4:30, and I'd say, okay. So at that time I didn't have a car, right? I'd get on my Harley and I'd drive down to meet Josh at 4:30. No Josh. And I'd call Josh, and he wouldn't pick up his phone. I'd keep calling him, and I'd say, man, what a waste of time. And I'd get back, get off my Harley, and Josh would say, hey, man, sorry, I can get there. I can get there tomorrow like 8. And I'd do that whole thing. Forget it. We set the time, and then we try to get, once the first appointment's set, we try to get 2 or 3 and in that time block. So if like one person flakes, no big deal. Facebook, we do a bunch of paid ads. I don't have enough data yet on if those are good leads or bad leads, but there's certainly a lot of activity. But I don't know, because I try to track everything in like 6-month increments, and we started tracking it about 5 months ago. So I can let you know later on how the quality of those leads. The typical Zillow, Trulia, all that syndicated stuff we do. A little bit of Craigslist, pretty heavy on the Go Section 8. And a lot of other, like,
You're heavy on what, the Section 8?
Go Section 8, yeah. Are you familiar with that?
Talk about that.
Yeah, it's just it's basically, if you get a voucher in the city of Chicago, you are instructed to look for a unit on a website that's called Go Section 8. And there's, at any one time, like probably 1,500, available units, ranging from complete garbage to stuff that anybody in this, arena would live in. And they look there. Typically, they look there first. But that's the easy part is like, so that's really the marketing aspect of it, and that's fine. Now, the screening starts as soon as we start asking questions, right? The VAs are asking them questions. How did you find us? Right? And it's specifically a somewhat long, drawn-out process to test the person's patience, right? And if the patience is broken or it's lost, it's not going to work, because we're going to ask a lot from you, and you're probably going to ask a lot from us. So we need to get eye to eye before you step foot in that unit. We have to be on the same page. So it's specifically designed. I mean, questions, how did you find about us? Have you ever heard about us before? A lot of people are like, I don't care. I just want to see the unit, right? How do you react? We don't care if you've heard about us. We want to know, how do you react, right? So that's kind of what it looks like now. And let's see, when I look back on it, like if you had a heartbeat and you didn't like stink real bad of like liquor and weed, I would probably put you in a unit 5 years ago. And now, like I'm looking to find a reason not to put somebody in, because a bad tenant, man, will just, it'll just ruin you.
So one of the, I think you gave me the most ninja strategy, and you didn't even touch on it. I don't know if you still do this, but talk about the candy bowl.
Yeah. So we switched offices, but I had an office on like a busy intersection right in front of a bus stop on Commercial Avenue, and we would put a candy bowl a little bit smaller than like the top of that trash can, right in front of like the lobby area, okay, where like the receptionist would sit, and we would stack it with all sorts of great candy. As you can tell, I love candy. But here's the reason why we did this. We put it in there to see the behavior of children and parents together. Do the children go to that bowl and attack it like savages? Do they ask their parents, can I have a piece of the candy? Do they ask us, we have a piece of that candy? It's like, it's like hardcore psychology from a candy bowl, and I can't tell you the amount of times it saved us. And we don't do that anymore because a lot of our stuff has gone online, but we do one last thing. If we're just not staffed large enough right now to do this on every visit, but if the tenant, so if they're living in 123 Main Street and the zip code was 60617, and we're just a touch questionable on something, what we'll do is we'll have the leasing agent say, you know what, Josh, everything looks really good here. Excuse me, I just forgot one last signature page, and I'm in the area. So I just got to swing by real quick, have you sign this. And believe it or not, if they're home, 8 out of 10 times, they'll be like, yeah, no problem, come by. And then we'll go, the leasing agent will go and say, listen, I've been like on the road all day, I'm drinking coffee, I'm so embarrassed to even ask this. Can I just use your bathroom real quick? And all we want is a 2-second glimpse. How are you living inside these 4 walls? Because how you're living inside these 4 walls is how you're going to treat our stuff, and we just want to peek at it. And if they don't, I mean, it's one thing if they're like, I'm on the train, I'm at work, fine, done, forget it. But if they're like, no, I don't want you over. No, I don't. You know what? No, I don't want you here. They're hiding something. So we try to catch that in the beginning, and we let them know. We let them know we might be stopping by. And they're like, what? We might be. But we do it for a reason, man. Because I've gone through a lot of unit turns.
Yeah.
But I'm still here. Still here, and we learn from these things.
Yeah, one book I recommend everyone to read. It's called The Smart Section 8 Landlord. In that book, when I was managing properties on my own before I had a manager, one of the things it talks about in that book is he would do his showings, and I would do the same thing. I'd do my showings at 7 a.m. on Saturday morning.
Ooh.
And really weeds out a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because there's no reason why no one can make a Saturday morning. Most people's jobs on Saturdays don't start till 9 a.m.
Right.
Or even later. So 7 a.m., that means they have to be responsible enough
To get up.
to go to bed.
Yeah.
I don't even want to be awake at 7 a.m. And the people that typically would be there before, like, you'd get there maybe like 6:50. If there's a car there, like, waiting, like, those are your people.
You want it, yeah.
And then you're out of there by 7:30, enjoy the rest of your Saturday. And then people are still trying to get in to see the unit. Those are the people you don't want to rent to because
Yeah.
they weren't responsible enough. So,
I like that.
yeah.
It's a good one.
So let's talk about acquisitions. Again, how did you start? What were you doing? Were you going on the MLS? And then what are you doing now to acquire properties? If you are acquiring,
Yeah.
what do you recommend people for them to acquire?
Sure. So, like, what's done is done, right? I'm not going to bore you with that, but like 5 years ago in 60617, you could, like, could buy anything. You literally could buy anything and it was cheap. So, and I mean like dirt cheap. You know, Jeff knows, he was out there, he's seen some stuff. And then prices began to increase and increase and increase some more. So in the early ages, like something could be on the MLS for 40 and you're like, no, I just can't get to 40. I can get to like 17,287. And the broker would call back and be like, that's insulting. And they'd say, all right, yeah, we'll do it. So that's what it was. And what it's like now is it's challenging and it's confusing because one block, the numbers won't cash flow. And then the next block, you know, you'll have like 4 or 5 board ups and you're like, do I want to like flip this entire block? Can I get this whole block? Or I can get these 4, but then I don't know what's going on with these 2 other zombie properties and that's going to screw it up. So it's a lot of digging and a lot of research, but I've personally slowed down in the last 12 to 16 months on my own portfolio. I've been working on systems and ways for me to be able to leave my business and have it operate. It doesn't mean that I'm not looking for deals. I'm always looking for deals. But I wanted to stabilize what I had and as well as grow the management side of things. But quite frankly, I think the best way is really the only way that I know how to do business, which is through relationships. If I'm gonna go, like, if I'm hunting for a deal, like, I'm just crazy. I will call everybody and anybody. I'll go through stacks of cards, people I haven't talked to in months, and say, hey, I must have met you at a RIA. I don't even remember your name, but your card says broker. I wanted to say hello. You're probably on the north side. If you know anybody on the south side, here's what I'm looking for, right? And I take that like mass guerrilla approach and I do it on all fronts. You do a great job on social media. I mean, every morning your stuff's up and boom, boom. Great job staying in front of people. I also like to do it face to face with some like heavy hitters at banks. So, you know, asset managers, people like that, I definitely want to talk to them. Even if I'm not buying, I want to buy them lunch because they're going to remember me when they have stuff and it's ready, it's time to go. We used to do a little bit of postcards. Again, I'm kind of like, I'm centralized in an area, so, I mean, we'll door knock, but we're so like, we put the stake in the ground, we're not really going too far from where we are. So I'm sorry, I'm not the best to answer that, but like if you're in like a zone where you have an area that you want to accelerate on, let everybody know that you want that to be your area, and go out and get it. That's my advice.
I mean, I think that's great advice. Your network is your net worth. I mean,
Yeah.
the people sitting around you are all potential sources of deals, areas you're particularly looking for. So that's great advice. What if, I would say, if you can give some advice to somebody that is just starting out, what advice would you give them to hit the ground running and get a business up and running if they want to get into building a rental portfolio?
It's a great question. I think the first thing is, don't overthink this, right? It's really, really, really important to know your numbers, right? But if you're sitting in this room, you probably have crunch numbers. You probably know what a decent cap rate is, and you probably understand some basics of real estate. Where I see a lot of folks hang out, if you will, in this space is like they're overanalyzing. They're overanalyzing. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? What if this happens? What if that happens? I have no idea. Here's what I do know. Shit's gonna happen, right? But you can fix it. You can fix it. So I guess the answer to that question is like, take action and get a team. Doesn't mean you need like some high-powered like Shark Tank team, but have somebody in your network that's like a good attorney. Have a good title company. Have a few great brokers. There's a bunch of great brokers in here. And let them know, right? Like let them know, hey, I'm working with this guy, and I'm also working with this guy. Like you're not the only shop in town. I do that all the time, respectively. Like I mean that with all due respect to every broker. But I'm not in bed with one broker. I'll let the other broker know, hey, Monday I'm with you, Tuesday I'm going out to lunch with her, and Wednesday I'm gonna go see this guy. So step it up, right? Get yourself a team. And don't overthink it. It's real estate. If the numbers make sense, the rest of this stuff can be worked out. It really can. It really can. Take action.
Awesome. And one other question for you. What some of the, I guess, a couple questions actually. So what's one of the most difficult or a few difficult times you've had in your business, and how did you overcome that?
I mean, there were a bunch of times where I got into and I still have some hard money, and I have an addictive personality. So like when I get going, I want to just keep going and going and going and going. And I took on like an enormous amount of debt at a really, really high interest rate. And I thought that I made some mistakes on my calculations of my numbers. And I realized like there may not be a way out of this for me. And it was like I had two ladies in the office that had access to like the bank accounts, and they both left on the same day. They looked and were like, "Dude, there's no way. There's no way he's going to make it." That was probably my toughest time, and that was maybe like 20 months in. You know, it was just I was over leveraged. I thought like if I have 20 properties, I'm running my numbers off. I have 20 rents. Okay, I have 20. I don't have any vacancies, but now I have 8 people not paying. Why? Because I didn't screen, right? I was letting arsons in there. I was doing this. I was doing that. I was going off my gut, and I got my bell rung. So that was probably my worst, like on paper, like shake up. And then how did you get through it? I just didn't stop. You know, what happened was I fixed the problem. I told the bank, I said, listen, I'm going to be a little short here. Okay? And this is not going to be a long-term thing. So I'm just going to come clean with you. And here's my action plan. I need to get these people out, and it's going to take me 30, 45 days to do it. I'm going to replace them. Here's going to be the income, and here's what this picture is going to look like in 60 days. And I spent every freaking waking moment fixing that problem. And then just as quick as it was going this way, it spun the other way. And then that gave me enough money to kind of tighten up a couple ones that I had empty, and I got more and more and more and more, and it just swung back. So it was action, it was grit, and it was like, I always had this, and I still do this today, I tell myself, like, I pray a lot and I meditate, and I like talk to myself when I'm driving, and I probably tell myself, I don't know, probably 100, maybe 200 times a day, like, I just tell myself, like, everything's okay. Everything's okay. It's very calming to me. Like, I'm on a personal level, everything's okay. Business level, everything's okay. And like days that I'm really feeling good, I'm like, I throw some vulgarity in there, and I'm like, things are fucking awesome. And then on the reverse, I don't allow myself to go down on those swings. I just consistently say things are okay, because you know what? Listen, we're fine. Each and every one of us is fine, right? And we can make these like real estate things, you know, like tenant didn't pay, or whatever. Pick the example. Like, they're not that big of deals, right? And everything is fixable. But we gotta like work hard to get through these things. But I mean, we're all sitting here today doing just fine, just fine. So
you talked about your financial, one of your most. Was there another time in your business, maybe not financial, but just a really dark time in your business, and how you overcame that?
Yeah, totally. Well, I told you like how loyal I am to, or how I believe that I'm loyal to people that like enter my life in the business world, and that's customers as well as vendors. So like, if I'm giving everything, like I really want you to give me that in return. And I realize like, not everybody sees the world as I do, right? Not everybody says 100, 200 times a day that things are okay. And people also react differently to different situations, right? A contractor might be like really, in his mind, like really, really strapped. And he may have to do some really, really jacked up things to get money. And I've been in that position before, and I've taken that like really personally. You know, I had a guy that was with me, man, I get the chills every time I talk about this. I had a guy that was with me for 2 years from day one. And my birthday is December 12th, and at that time, the rent roll was like, it was a huge moment for us as like, we weren't partners, but it was a big moment for us. We broke like 15,000. I think the mortgages were like 8 or 9 or something like that. And I had everybody pay. I didn't have these systems. I had bad systems. I had everybody pay at a currency exchange. Now I still do that, but I'm the guy that goes and gets them on certain days. Then I allowed him to go get it. And on December 10th, I went on to go on an airplane to go see my family, and gave each other a big hug, and he's like, "Love you, man," and he's like, "I'll see you when you get back." And then I'm like, "Yep." And I called him around Christmas. I'm away from the business for like 2 weeks. It's like perfect time for him to jack me. And I came back the 26th or 27th. There was nothing at the currency exchange. I asked the lady, "Hey, what's the deal here?" She's like, "Oh yeah, your boy came and took the money." I'm like, "Ooh." I haven't seen him since, but you know, I wish him the best. It took me a long time to get over that. It was a big, the money hurt, but it was like, I really had places that, I had visioned places where we were going to go together with this business. So then the whole psychology of my vision had to change, which is fine, because we're in a much better spot. But that was a tough one, man, because it was financial, and then it was also like a personal, not attack, but it was painful. Yeah, you get it. I mean, it just hurt. So it was cool to get through it. You know, and it's like, the longer we stay in this, I mean, there's gonna be, I mean, nothing wrong with contractors, but like, each one of us is gonna get burned. And if you haven't been burned yet, just like, hang out a little longer. You'll get burned. And you'll be like, "Oh my God, I remember totally what that guy was talking about. This sucks." And then when that happens, be like, "You know what, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm fucking okay." Right? And you're okay. So.
Awesome. And we'll open it up for a couple questions from the audience. Hey, anybody have questions for Chair?
How's your 100 units, how are they set up legally? LLCs, how do you structure those?
Yeah, good question. So it's set up now, parent LLC with series, and then land trust every 8 to 12, right? So it's a set, let's just call it 10. So there's 10 sets set up the same way. Parent, series, trust, parent, series, trust, parent, series, trust. Which is nice because I've just got my first, oh, that's another thing. I got my first lawsuit maybe a week ago. And I'm like, there's like a sheriff at the door, at the office door, and the guy's like gigantic, and he's like, "Sign here." Sign, I open it up, and it's from this tenant that like fell down the steps. What? But long story short, she hired like one of those like TV commercial attorneys, so she's suing the management company, and the management company doesn't own any of the assets, so it's the wrong person to sue. But anyways, you're on the right track. Parent, series, trust. Keep those things locked up.
So explain that, because you're also the management company, correct? So that's completely separate.
Yeah, so the management company is a pass-through. We don't own any assets. What we do is just collect rents and manage the properties. So the management company then has a contract with each individual owner, owner being the series LLC for this holdings company. Does that make sense? I can tell you more about it. Draw it out. Yeah, so the advice I got on the first one was have a parent LLC, and then underneath that parent LLC have a series LLC, okay? And then and the reason for the series LLCs was strictly cost. Like I say a parent, I mean, maybe you can call it a regular LLC. I don't know exactly what, I know what they were like $775, and then somebody in Springfield threw us a solid and they went to 500, but the series are only like 75 bucks. So that was from protection standpoint and cost efficiency. If you're gonna like start cranking through, that was the advice that I was given on how to set that up. No, so you have a parent, then there's 10 series, and then the 10 series sit in the land trust. Or the land trust sits above the series. Yeah, so if you look down at a graph, exactly, it would be parent, land trust, series. And somehow or another, when the guys don't cut the grass and we get the $200 fine, the city of Chicago knows how to crack these land trusts like nobody else. It's unbelievable. You ever get fines like that for not cutting grass?
Problem is they give you I've had it where they wait to give you the fine. So
You get it like a year. Yeah. That's segment 2. Yeah.
So I was curious at what point do you refi, like right away, right after rehab, or do
Yeah, good point.
you still do it on all your properties?
I still use the same lenders, so for me, like when I get done with the 10, I just do that same exact model. If I were just starting out, or the project sizes were different, I mean, my project sizes aren't that big. I would get out as quick as possible and put as much. Again, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a financial advisor, I'm just a common sense investor. What I believe in is long-term debt. Well, first what I believe in is cash flow. So in order to get there, if you can stretch your amortization out as far as you can and lock in a low interest rate, it's a simple recipe for higher cash flow. So I would get out as soon as possible, go as far as you can out with that debt and lock it in. Like my paper, so my loans are good for 10 years. So the stuff that I started 5 years ago now is halfway through, right? So I have some equity that I've paid down. I also have some appreciation, right, that has helped with wealth. But I don't really want to tap that cash. What I want to do is I'm looking for a program or some sort of, loan, commercial loan or something, and I know they're out there, especially today, and just say, how do I restabilize all this? Instead of 10-year, give me 30. And I'll actually pay an extra, I mean, right now my rates are like 5.5. Like I would pay 6.25 in order to go 30 years and know that I'm locked in. So does that help answer your question? That was the loan program that they put together. And they were kind of like the first people that gave me a shot. And again, I talked about like loyalty, so I'm like, hey, this is working. I'm just gonna like rinse and repeat this thing as many times as possible.
If you have a bank that'll do it on one property at similar rates, I mean, not saying that outside from your royalty thing, someone else has one thing.
Yeah, hell yeah, get in and get out. Do it every single one. And then maybe, after you get a bunch, you can figure out what you want to do. And so I'm sure that there's people that would argue the fact, well, it's going to cost, $1,500 to do the loan, whatever. You're in real estate. You're going to figure out a way to make $1,500 or lose it. I double digits. That's what we like. Yeah. And here's the thing. The bank, let's talk after so I don't get too confused with all these numbers.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
What's the most money you've had to put into a unit after someone moves out because of
Man, like, it was really bad, like $7,800. And they took the water heater. I mean, this is just like one apartment. Whole thing was gone. Whole thing, but again, right? I'm okay. And that stuff works. That's why I do that. Because you lose your mind thinking that, right? Because you could go the other way and go, why am I doing this? right? Just lady just took the whole freaking year, and then some, because now I gotta pay a leasing agent to lease it up, right? And all that time, value of money. It's just, but you know, you play the numbers, and yeah, you're gonna get dogged a couple times, but you know, over the course of a portfolio, you're gonna do just fine. I don't know if there is. I'll give you my card. Call me.
All right, one last question, so it's got to be good. A lot of pressure. One last question. No one wants to step up.
How are you preparing yourself for the market production?
How are you preparing?
Great question. So I think I touched on that. I'm trying to reposition my current position in debt to be able to withstand, you know, if I don't get out right now, what happens in 5 years could be a problem for me. If I reposition debt and I can extend myself either another 10 years or longer, I feel completely comfortable. So my personal answer to that question is I'm repositioning debt.
Well, everyone, please give Mr. Jared Cott a huge round of applause.
Thank you.